because this temple was a birth gift for the emperor, who was the third emperor of the Tang dynasties.
The original?
This one is the original, but except this pagoda, all of the construction around of here was rebuilt from the Ming and the Qing dynasty. Yeah, but according to the history records, in the Tang dynasty, this temple is 7 times bigger than today. It's one of the famous imperial temples. At that time, only for the royals, only for the royal peoples to come to pray. Yeah. And the pagoda is the first main construction for the traditional Chinese temple. So you have to know what is a pagoda. Why we build these tall buildings in the temple. So the pagoda, this is not the Chinese words. It's from the Indian. In the Indian, they call the pagoda is a stupa. Stupa. Yeah, the stupa. Stupa means Buddha cemetery. Buddha cemetery, the tomb of the Buddha. We know the Buddha is his name is Sakyamuni, who was alive in the 2,500 years ago, who was a prince of the ancient India. This guy's the Sakyamuni distribute of the Buddhism. So he became the Buddha after he nirvana, after he died. Yeah, after he died. And the king of the Osaka, who was the most famous king in the ancient India, and he was a believer of the Buddhism, and he was burned of the Buddhism, the Buddha's body, and also he was separate the Buddha's bone for 84,000 pieces, the bones, 84,000 pieces, and give to the monks. Let monks go around of the world, and it means that the Buddha's powers separate around of the earth to all the world and the spirit. Yes, and so how to keep the Buddha's bones? They were get many donation from the local believers, and at last they built a tower for keep the bones of the Buddha. The tower called a stupa, also translated to English is a pagoda. The pagoda is the cemetery of the Buddha, And so every pagoda, there have the underground palace. Yes, it depends about how big of the pagoda. This one, the underground palace, is around about 35 square meters. Like the one room, the 35 square meters. Yep, it's not. And so after the archaeologists was, discovered, we were found over the 1,000 pieces of the gold and the silver object from the underground palace. And that is the donation from the imperial during the different dynasties. Every time when the imperial peoples come to worship, and at the last, at the final, they put some of the donation to the god, to the Buddha. So the basement is, we can see the basement is just like the treasure storage for keep the donation from the otherwise. Yeah, and this pagoda why is so famous because it was happened twice of the accident. In the Ming Dynasty, date back to about 700 years ago, the Xian, my city, was happened an earthquake. But it's not really, the heavy. It's not really heavy. It's about the 5 or 4 grade. Yep, 5 or 4. It's also great. Yeah. And this pagoda, when the first time, twice of the earthquake. The first time, this pagoda split to the further, but it's not fallen down. It's not, collapsed. And so this split over than 5 years later, the next time of the earthquake also happening here. The pagoda closing back. Wow! The closing back.
Oh my God.
Close up. And during that times, nobody can explain why this the pagoda can prepare by itself, and they believe this is the God blessed pagoda. So that become very famous during the Ming Dynasty. The peoples come from everywhere around of the China and come to here to worship. And in that times, from the far away, you can see here's like the burned, because everybody's take the incense, fire the burn of the incense. So a huge of the smoke around of the whole temples. It's crazy. And but in the modern times, and our architecture was expand. Why? Because in that times, the designer was found the way how to defense of the earthquake, because the foundation of this building is not a square or oblong shape. It's the bowl shape, like the bowl. It's a round shape. Ferrets, yeah. And when the first time earthquake, the whole foundations just can moved. And but the pagoda cannot move, so they split. But the next times, the powers got just from another side. They moved the whole foundations back, and so the pagoda is closed back. Yeah, so it's how clever of the designer, even the guys from the 1300 years ago. Yeah, so that's why the small wild goose pagoda could be famous. And the second reasons why the small wild goose pagoda is famous, because in the Tang Dynasty, the late of the Tang Dynasty, the one of the Chinese monk who was being to the India, and he did the education tours, because the Buddhism from the India is not a traditional Chinese religion. So he went to the Indian by himself. He was walked to the India. The monk. 6 years. He walked on foot. He walked to India.
Barefoot.
By foot. Yeah.
Not barefoot, by foot. Not barefoot.
We have shoes or we have shoes?
I think it's North Face shoes. The North Face Australian shoes. And he went to the Indian, and he spent his whole life, almost the whole life, for studies in the Indian. So he stayed in India 12 years, and so his steps go around of the whole Indian. His foot is go around of whole India. He went to every famous temple, going to learn the language and do the conversation with the famous Indian monks. And another 6 years, he come back to China. So during that time, the Buddhism was a national religion. Even the emperor was the believers of the Buddhism. And so he became the great master, because he was being to the source of the Buddhism. And the emperor allowed him to live inside. And he was keep a lot of the Buddhism scripture, which scripture he was took from the Indian, and keep the inside. So Sanskrit, yeah, he was translated the Buddhism scriptures and from the Indian to Chinese, and he was teach the Chinese monk even to do the the religion jobs. And so this monk name is Xian monk. The Xian monk. He was the most famous Chinese Buddhism monk of the China history. And after, according to his journey, and the one of the famous writer whose name is Wu Cheng'en, he write of the legend book called Journey to the West. If you saw some Hollywood movies, you will know the Monkey King. The king of the monkey. The guy is like a monster. This and also the monk of the Xuandang have 3 students. The first one, the guys look like the monkey. And the second one, the guys look like the pig man. Monkey King and pig man, even the river ghost. The 3 bodyguards, 3 students guarding the Shifu. Shifu means master to the Western world. Yeah, this is the legend story. You can searching the story from the Google searching. The called Journey to the West. Journey to, and so that is why he was living here. He lived here before. That is why this pagoda is to be very, very famous in every. In China, every temple they build the pagoda. Someone is not for the Buddha temple. After the master died, after the master of the temple died, we also build the pagodas for burial the bodies. Yeah. Okay, so you can take some picture. Yes, please.
Did you have the